Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, this amendment would include the provisions of A5044 Kolb, which creates the Division of Regulatory Review and Economic Growth for the purposes of establishing a framework to reduce regulatory burdens on businesses. The Division of Regulatory Review and Economic Growth would be led by a commissioner to be appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate for a fixed term of 5 years. The division would be required to review and make recommendations for the elimination of burdensome state agency rules, regulatory processes, and permit requirements affecting local governments, school districts, or businesses. It would establish an 800 hotline and website to assist businesses and for the public to report regulatory burdens and excessive fines and to submit requests for regulatory approval. It would review every proposed state agency rule and either approve or reject such rule. Submit an annual report to the governor and legislature with recommendations on repealing or amending rules, regulatory process, and permit requirements it deems necessary to lower costs for local governments, school districts, and businesses, or promote economic growth. It would require those recommendations to take effect unless rejected by the governor or by a concurrent resolution of the legislature. It would also produce an annual report on the regulatory reform actions proposed and implemented and their estimated or actual cost of savings to the taxpayers. Just a couple more pieces. Would prepare or have prepared a comprehensive study to measure and report the cost of regulations to businesses throughout the state. Would make several changes to the makeup of the Joint Legislative Administrative Regulations Review Commission. Would authorize the Commission to review legislation and laws that require the promulgation of rules and make recommendations for action by the legislature. And finally, implement a regulatory Wednesdays requiring the Joint Legislative Administrative Regulations Review Commission to meet on Wednesdays, which are scheduled session days, and to make recommendations for regulatory reform. Also, require the legislature to take up any legislation approved by the Commission prior to taking up any other legislation unless such action is waived by a majority vote.
Ms. Corwin, the chair has examined your amendment and has found it germane to the bill before the House. On the amendment, Ms. Corwin?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, since the Governor's Office of Regulatory Reform was eliminated in the 2011-2012 enacted budget, there is no entity in New York State policing the regulation state agencies impose on local governments, school districts, and businesses. Some costly, burdensome regulations are detrimental to businesses and hurt the local taxpayers. New York State is tangled up in 12 miles of rules, regulations, and red tape, and that's according to the Administrative Regulations Review Commission and the Pataki administration. As one example, the New York Code of Rules and Regulations consisted of over 92 volumes, totaling more than approximately 140,000 pages of regulations. Nothing in this current budget addresses burdensome rules and regulations that makes New York State what it's famous for. This amendment would allow us to address all areas of government and improve the quality of life for all New Yorkers by reducing burdensome regulations. In terms of a fiscal impact, I know it was presented earlier, a large number. I'm going to invoke the line often used by the other side of the aisle and claim any increase in cost associated with this amendment will be more than offset by the savings to taxpayers, businesses, and communities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.